Steam is once again going completely insane with discounts. We're talking atmospheric horror games, brutal action titles, classic shooters, relaxing indie adventures, and even some games you can try for a limited time right now. And this isn't random filler, these are games that are actually worth checking out, especially at these prices. So today I'm going through another fresh batch of Steam deals you really don't want to miss. Right at the start, INDUSTRIA is sitting at 90% off until May 13th, and this is one of those games that immediately grabs your attention with its atmosphere. It's a short story-driven shooter that feels heavily inspired by classic games like Half-Life, where the world itself tells a big part of the story. You're exploring strange industrial environments filled with abandoned technology, mysterious machines, and a constant feeling that something is very wrong. The combat is simple but satisfying, and the pacing works really well because the game never drags things out too much. What really makes INDUSTRIA stand out is the mood though. The environments feel lonely and unsettling in a really good way, and if you enjoy narrative shooters with strong immersion, this is easily worth checking out at this price. And next, Clash, Artifacts of Chaos, at 90% off until May 20th, and this is honestly one of the most unique games on the entire list. Everything about it feels strange in the best possible way, from the creature designs to the world itself. It almost feels like stepping into some bizarre fantasy painting where nothing follows normal rules. The combat is very physical and heavy, with a big focus on timing, dodging, and close-range fighting. There's also a mechanic where random dice-style games can affect battles before they even begin, which makes the whole experience feel unpredictable. It's definitely not a mainstream AAA game, but that's exactly why it stands out so much. If you're tired of games that all feel the same, this one is a really refreshing change. Up next, Werewolf the Apocalypse Earthblood, at 90% off until May 20th, and this game fully commits to the fantasy of becoming an unstoppable monster. You're switching between human, wolf, and full werewolf forms depending on the situation, and combat becomes incredibly aggressive once things start escalating. The game focuses a lot more on action than deep storytelling, but honestly that works in its favor because the main appeal here is just tearing through enemies at high speed. The environments are dark, gritty, and fit the overall tone really well, and while it may not be the most polished game ever made, at this discount it's very easy to recommend if you just want fast, chaotic action. Up next, TOEM, a photo adventure, at 90% off until May 16th, and this is probably the most relaxing game in the entire video. The whole experience revolves around exploring small, charming locations, taking photos, helping characters, and slowly discovering new areas. There's no pressure, no difficult combat, and no stressful mechanics. It's just a very cozy adventure with a beautiful black and white art style and a surprisingly wholesome atmosphere. The photography mechanic also makes exploration more fun because you're constantly looking for little details and hidden moments in the environment. It's one of those games that instantly puts you in a good mood the second you start playing. Up next, Golf with Your Friends, at 90% off until May 11th, and this is still one of the best casual multiplayer games on Steam for almost no money. On the surface it's just mini golf, but the maps are filled with ridiculous obstacles, moving platforms, traps, and shortcuts that can completely ruin a perfect round in seconds. It's super easy to understand, which makes it perfect for playing with anyone, even people who normally don't play games much. But at the same time, the physics and map design create so many unexpected moments that every match ends up feeling chaotic in the best possible way. Up next, Witcher at 85% off until May 15th, and this game takes a simple idea and somehow turns it into something incredibly entertaining. One team disguises themselves as random objects around the map, while the other team tries to hunt them down before time runs out. What makes it so fun is how creative players can get with hiding spots and mind games. You'll see people pretending to be furniture, barrels, plants, and all kinds of random objects while trying not to move or attract attention. It creates a lot of genuinely funny moments, especially with friends, and it's one of those multiplayer games that's really easy to jump into for quick sessions. And next, I Am Fish, at 80% off until May 18th, and this is probably one of the strangest concepts here, but it's surprisingly charming. You're controlling different fish, trying to escape captivity and somehow reach the ocean, which leads to all kinds of ridiculous situations. The physics are intentionally awkward at times, so even basic movement can turn into complete chaos, but that's part of what makes the game entertaining. Every fish also controls differently, which keeps the gameplay from becoming repetitive. It's funny, weird, and honestly much more enjoyable than it probably sounds at first. Up next, Dragon Ball Xenoverse, at 90% off until May 21st, and if you're even remotely a Dragon Ball fan, this is a really easy recommendation at this price. Instead of just replaying the anime exactly as it happened, the game lets you create your own character and become part of the story itself. You're traveling through iconic moments from the series, fighting alongside familiar characters and changing events when timelines start going wrong. The combat is fast, flashy, and full of huge energy attacks that really capture the feel of Dragon Ball battles. There's also a ton of customization for your character, which gives you a reason to keep playing and experimenting with different builds and abilities. And next, this war of mine at 85% off until May 19th, and this is still one of the most emotional and memorable survival games ever made. What makes it stand out is that you're not playing as soldiers or action heroes. You're controlling ordinary civilians trying to survive during a war. Every day becomes a difficult balancing act between finding food, keeping people healthy, managing supplies, and making morally difficult decisions just to stay alive. The game constantly puts pressure on you emotionally because there are no perfect choices. Sometimes helping someone else means risking your own survival, and sometimes surviving means doing things you really don't want to do. It's dark, grounded, and one of those games that sticks with you long after you finish it. Up next, Road Redemption at 85% off until May 19th, and this game basically takes motorcycle racing and turns it into complete madness. You're speeding through highways while fighting other bikers using bats, pipes, kicks, and whatever else you can get your hands on. Crashes happen constantly, police get involved, and entire races can suddenly become total chaos in seconds. It clearly doesn't take itself seriously, and honestly that's exactly why it works so well. The gameplay feels fast, aggressive, and unpredictable, especially once the action really starts escalating. If you just want something fun and chaotic that you can jump into immediately, this is a really solid pick. And next, Far Cry 3 and Blood Dragon both at 75% off until May 11th, and these are still some of the best games in the entire Far Cry franchise. Far Cry 3 especially remains iconic because of its setting, open world gameplay, and one of the most memorable villains Ubisoft has ever created. Exploring the island still feels great today, and the mix of action, stealth, and freedom keeps the gameplay fun the whole way through. And then Blood Dragon goes in a completely different direction with its insane retro sci-fi style inspired by old action movies from the 80s. Neon colors, ridiculous dialogue, lasers, giant monsters, everything about it is intentionally over the top, and that's exactly what makes it so entertaining. Up next, a lot of Call of Duty games are also heavily discounted right now, with sales ranging from 60% to 67% off depending on the title, and honestly some of these are still really fun to revisit. My personal favorites are World War II, Vanguard, and Ghosts. World War II has one of the better modern Call of Duty campaigns with a much more grounded tone. Ghosts feels different compared to most entries because of its atmosphere and setting, and Vanguard still delivers that fast-paced classic Call of Duty gameplay that's easy to jump into for a few matches. If you've been wanting to replay some older Call of Duty games or try ones you skipped before, this is probably the best time to do it. And finally, you can also try the Midnight Walkers and Foundry for a limited time until May 11th, and both of these are worth checking out for completely different reasons. The Midnight Walkers goes for a much darker survival-focused atmosphere where you're exploring dangerous environments, fighting to stay alive, and constantly dealing with tension around every corner. It has that gritty survival feel where resources matter and every encounter can turn bad very quickly. The world itself also looks really interesting, with a heavy focus on atmosphere and exploration, which makes it feel a lot more immersive than a lot of smaller survival games. And then Foundry takes things in the complete opposite direction and focuses entirely on creativity, automation, and building massive industrial systems. If you enjoy games like Factorio or Satisfactory, this is probably going to catch your attention immediately. You're mining resources, building production lines, optimizing machines, and slowly turning a simple setup into a huge automated factory. These kinds of games are incredibly addictive because there's always something to improve or redesign, and before you realize it, hours have disappeared. If you found something interesting for yourself, make sure to subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. We're already getting really close to 10,000 subscribers, which honestly still feels crazy to me. So thank you all so much for the support. I truly appreciate it. And seriously, seeing more people join the channel motivates me to keep making even more videos like this and keep finding the best deals for you guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.